And hello, everybody. Welcome to the Bearded Bible Thinker podcast. It has been a minute. I haven't done much this week. It's been a super busy week here at my desk. Regardless of popular opinion, pastors actually do work other times than Sunday. Today is September 11th. It's a big day, big moment, and always is every year. It's a major thing, and I ran across the headline this morning, which is a headline that multiple places have some version of this headline. This particular one is NPR.org, and this is the headline. Quote, America will always rise up, end quote. Trump, Biden commemorate September 11th attacks. Okay, so here's what the article says. Friday marks the 19th anniversary of the September 11, 2001 attacks against the United States, the single deadliest instance of a terrorist attack in world history, and among the most consequential global policy markers in modern times. President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump attended a morning observance in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, where United Flight 93, believed to be headed toward Washington, D.C., crashed, killing all 40 passengers and crew on board. Former Vice President Joe Biden is expected to visit later Friday. In his remarks at the somber ceremony, Trump said, "The heroes of Flight 93 are an everlasting reminder that no matter the danger, no matter the threat, no matter the odds, America will always rise up, stand tall, and fight back." Trump spoke of, quote, our undying loyalty to the nearly 6 million young men and women who have enlisted in the United States Armed Forces since September 11th, 2001. More than 7,000 military heroes have laid down their lives since 9/11 to preserve our freedom. No words can express the summit of their glory or the infinite depth of our gratitude, but we will strive every single day to repay our immeasurable debt and prove worthy of their supreme sacrifice, end quote. Donald Trump has actually always been really pro-military, at least I say always. I didn't know the man 10 years ago, but in his presidency anyway, he's always been very pro-military. Again, I can't speak to really before that. I wasn't. I was aware that he existed, but I didn't know anything about him, except for that "you're fired" line that was so famous. But this is something. This is a big deal. You know, September 11th was a game changer. It was a history-making event, to say the least. And actually, my children this morning for homeschool, one of the things that they did for history and Bible both was to watch some September 11th footage, and then Mama explained some of the particulars to them, and I believe even talked about how this is the event that sparked the war that Daddy went to fight in. So it's really. And I enlisted in the Marine Corps in 2006, and which was obviously years after the event itself. And what happened to the World Trade Centers is tragic, to say the least. And tragic doesn't even sum it up. It's something that forever has changed America and the world, honestly, when it comes to terrorism and the plots and the thinking and the emphasis put on stopping it and fighting against it. And so it was very much worthy of being remembered every September 11th until the end of time. I mean, it was such a big deal, such a tragic loss of life. I'm like many people who were old enough at that point to know what was going on. I remember right where I was when that happened. Man, what a big deal. What a big deal. One thing that I do not like, that I deeply don't like, is how much this is going to be politicized. This year in particular, it is every year to some degree, because in Washington, everything is about politics. It always reaches its ugly face around and it gets its nasty fingers in everything, and everything, no matter the difficulty and somberness of the moment, everything just turns into politics. We see that over and over again. And actually, I'm planning on addressing the wildfires next week, and that's been the same story. It has turned into so and so hasn't said anything about wildfires, or what Trump or Biden are incoherent when it comes to wildfires and people, and it's like, look, people are dying, like people are losing everything they own. Like, this is a bigger deal. Like, just shut up about the politic part of it long enough to let's just hear the news and hear the updates and mourn with some of these folks. And man, just everything gets politicized, and 9/11 is no different, sadly. But hopefully, you and I at least can, whether we agree with war or not, no matter what your thoughts are, there were lots of lives lost that day, and I hope and pray that that this is a day that you and I can both remember. That we can both remember, that we can all remember the tragedy, remember what happened there, and understand and know that this is simply another of the many, 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 many evidences of the fall. I have to do a celebration of life tomorrow for a gal that passed away in late May, and from part of our church family. She had just moved away from here, and then she passed away, and but part of what I'll talk about tomorrow is that very thing, that this is really all evidence of the fall. It's all evidence that Genesis 3 happened, that we sinned against God, and since then this creation has been marred. It has been broken. It has been messed up, and everything from hatred to violence to the lying, cheating, all the stuff that you see in the news and the media and the all the things that I complain about on here, and much, much more. All of the strife and struggle that you've dealt with in your own life, that I've dealt with in my life, all of the pain, all of the sorrow, all of it is because of us. All of it is because of the sinful humans on this planet. God put us here on purpose to image Him. We were made in the image of God, the Bible says, and He put us here for that reason, to be mirrors of Him, to show the rest of creation, to remind the rest of creation and one another who God is and what He's like. We were put here to enjoy Him, to rest in Him, to have relationship with Him, to walk day in and day out alongside Him, and it was the perfect scenario. And then we chose to be our own God. We chose to worship us, and so it turned out to be a bad thing. And ever since then, right, we have disease, we have hatred, we have murder, we have strife, we have anxiety, we have all of the things, the infinite list of things about this world and about your life and my life and our experiences that are negative, that are bad. All of those things stem from that one moment so long ago when our first parents decided to worship themselves, decided they wanted to be God rather than to worship the one true Creator God. And 9/11 was a tragic a tragic testimony to that being true. One of the major things that you hear from unbelievers about how ridiculous Christianity is, you hear unbelievers talk about the evil that is allowed in the world. You hear atheists, this is one of their arguments. If God is good, why is there evil, right? Why does he let bad things happen? How could a good God let bad things happen? And the short version of that answer is simply that God is allows free will, and I am convinced that biblically and experientially, and when you just look out at the world, I'm convinced that it's people who are the problem and not God. Evil lies within our heart, and it starts from birth. We are born into sin. We're conceived in iniquity, as David puts it. He was conceived in sin, meaning not that mama was sleeping around and that's how he was conceived, but he was conceived in sin. All he means by that is I was born and I was already a sinner. We are born sinners, and that there are folks who don't believe that. There are folks who would adamantly fight against that in an argument, but you can't really get away from it. You just can't. Biblically, there's no point to be made otherwise, and even experientially, look, if you have kids, you know that that's true. from the very beginning of life, they're screaming and crying and all about themselves, and of course, that is self-preservation, and it's reflex, and it's not in their control. But as soon as them youngsters start to be able to talk, some of the very first things out of their mouth are no, right? This is usually one of the first words, and they'll slap and no, I want my way. And it doesn't take long for us to see the littlest humans begin to display that nature that they were born with. And so God isn't evil because bad things happen. People are evil and in need of that good God, and that's the bad things that happen in this world, like it or not. 9/11, all the way to my grandparents dying of heart attacks and cancer, and the things that we've seen around us, any kind of tragedy that you've been through or seen happen to loved ones, those kinds of things, all of them are simply evidence that even though God is good and God created everything and said it was good, that there is evil in the world because people chose something other than God, because people chose to worship people. And now we worship all kinds of things. We were made to worship. We are worshipers by our very nature. It's just that now our nature says worship yourself, worship this person or this thing or that experience. So worship is something that we just do. We're born with it, and as soon as humanity chose to begin worshiping itself, it turned into 9/11. It turned into 9/11, and then the war after that. And what he said about the statistics, where was that? Up here? Yeah. More than 7,000 military heroes have laid down their lives since 9/11 to preserve our freedom. 9/11 sparked a war that even cost lives after the tragedy of 9/11, which took lives. Many lives were lost that day, and then 7,000 more, give or take, that have given up their lives because of that moment, because of that one moment. And it's no different. It would be irresponsible of me as a Bible teacher and as a pastor to not point out that As in the same way that 9/11 was that one moment that caused much more devastation, much more life to be lost. It caused a war that is in many ways still going on. There are still people in Iraq and still people in Afghanistan that, even though the numbers have shrunk and they're shrinking more and more all the time, though there are still some families who are home waiting for a loved one to get back from deployment because of 9/11. And praying that a loved one makes it back from deployment because of 9/11. The death toll is still not complete. It's still not in. I pray that it ends. I pray that it gets over at some point. But the nature of this world at this point, after the fall, is that war is a reality, that having to defend is a reality, that having to attack evil is a reality. It's man, one moment, one master plan that devastated the whole nation for a time, and actually made people who would have called themselves indifferent or agnostic or atheist or whatever, start displaying "In God We Trust" and like start praying to a God they didn't even know, and some of them that still don't. They just, out of reflex. It's like God makes us innately to know Him or something. That was definitely me being a smart aleck. But it is without sarcasm that that I say that in the same way that 9/11 was this one critical catalyst moment that started much more devastation. That is the same as the that one moment in history when Adam and Eve did what they did, when they that very first moment when they chose themselves, when they chose that they wanted to be like God rather than to worship God, that they wanted to be God rather than to worship God. In that very moment, it caused infinite devastation to some, and so the sin that has been a part of this world for thousands of years now is it shows its ugly face every day. It shows its face in the world as we look around and see people, many people fighting simply for the point of fighting and no other point. It's why we see people posting things on Facebook that and Twitter and all the things that are news nowadays. Very rarely do you see news that isn't skewed or negative or defeating, and all of that is evidence of the fall that happened so long ago. It was that one moment that caused all of creation to be broken. And so let's remember that in the same way that God told the Israelites over and over and over and over again, remember Egypt, remember Egypt, remember Egypt, remember what happened in Egypt, remember the bondage you were in, remember Egypt. In that same way, we need to look back and remember history. We need to look back and remember the things that have happened, that they're important. Even the most terrible things in history that have happened at the hands of men and women are important for us to remember, so they are not repeated. Right? Like that's actually the point, not so that we can celebrate those things. Slavery is a big thing that gets talked about nowadays with the racial tension that's going on, which is also evidence of the fall. And slavery is not something, of course, not something that we want to commemorate and celebrate. But we're irresponsible, ignorant, and ridiculous if we try to erase that from history, because history is doomed to repeat itself over and over and over and over again if we're not conscious of it. If I'm not conscious of the mistakes that I've made in my own life, I am doomed to continue in those mistakes. I am doomed to continue making the same mistakes, making the same bad choices, doing the same stupid things over and over again, because that's just how we're built. So, 9/11, we've got to remember that and honor those who have suffered since then and love them. There are families who, I know this was 19 years ago, but there are families who right now are still in pain, especially as this anniversary comes around every year. So take time today and pray for those families. Take some time today and pray for them, and do do your part to pass on the information and what happened and what's happened since then and what it's caused. And let's make sure that that as parents, or as people, even if you're not a parent, as people who likely have some sort of children in your life, let's make sure that we are let's make sure that we're doing our part to show the next generation what happened there and what it caused and all the devastation. And let's not only pray for those families, but let's stop history from repeating itself and causing more and more devastation. And I just thank God as I get ready to stop this particular podcast. I just want to thank God, and I want you to thank God that the devastation we see around us, the sin we see around us, the devastation that has come from the fall of mankind that I've been talking about, that's not the whole story. That's not where the story ends. That there's redemption. That was simply the setting for God's entire redemptive story, and to show us the necessity of Christ coming and paying for the sin that we see around us. And so until next time, think about it.